So this is the new POCO F5. When I see POCO, the first thing that comes to my mind is the word affordable. It doesn't stop there though, as POCO phones also perform quite well for their price range. We've played around quite a bit with this phone and now have enough information to tell you if it's a good deal or not. Let the facts speak. Straight out of the box, the POCO F5 comes with a 67-watt charger and a USB-C cable. It has a thickness of 7.9 millimeters and weighs approximately 181 grams. The build quality is okay for the price, with the front being glass and the frame and the back being plastic, which isn't really a surprise. The display size is 6.67 inches, which is in my opinion really big. While it may not be everyone's cup of tea, if you find yourself on YouTube and Twitch a lot, then this big of a display is a pretty positive feature. It's a 10-bit AMOLED screen with 1080 by 2400 pixels. Logically, it's a full HD screen, while the Pro has a 1440 by 3200 wide QHD one. The aspect ratio is 20 by 9, which makes it a pretty tall phone, and the refresh rate is the same on both the base and the Pro version, sitting at 120 Hz. This is particularly appealing to me because in the past, 90 Hz refresh rates were seen to be really good, but now you've got 120 Hz on budget and mid-range phones while no one blinks an eye. The pixel density is 395 ppi, as the screen-to-body ratio is almost 89%. Luckily, it also has Gorilla Glass 5 protection, as the Pro version has the latest that Corning has to offer, the Gorilla Glass Victus. Touch sampling is 300 Hz, the brightness is decent at 1000 nits, and it has HDR10+. There are 3 cameras in the backside, which we will cover in more detail in the camera comparison category, so stay tuned for that. There's also a headphone jack, and I have to say that I love phones that still house them because cable quality is way better than Bluetooth at a much cheaper price. And lastly, you could consider liking and subscribing to support our channel. The chipset is a Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2. Now, this is getting kind of confusing. 8 Gen 1, 8 Gen 2, 8 Plus Gen 1, Snapdragon has just so many of these that we're needing a checklist just to keep up. Long story short, Snapdragon chipsets are really good, so the 7 Plus Gen 2 is going to be more than good enough to provide for your daily needs. Some cool information, the POCO F5 is actually the first phone overseas with a Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2. The chip is better than the Snapdragon 870 and the 888, so this should give you a general idea on how impressive it is to have this chipset in a POCO phone. If this were an experimental chip like a Tensor or Exynos, then a budget phone with medium-level hardware could have struggled in the long run, but there's a reason that Snapdragon is globally known to be extremely consistent with any type of phone or brand, and this is why the POCO F5 is an ideal phone that won't cause any issues whatsoever when playing games of medium to high intensity. There are 2 choices for RAM. You can go with 8 or 12 gigabytes. 8 is enough for pretty much everyone out there, but you might want to go with 12 if you're going to be playing a lot of games and maybe trying your luck with editing some advanced videos for social media. Storage is pretty standard, 128 or 256 gigabytes depending on your usage. One thing that I did expect was that maybe there would be a space to expand the storage with, but POCO didn't want to include an SD card slot. Now, I personally never need one, as even 128 is a lot for me since I'm not shooting videos everywhere I go, but I know some people around me have trouble keeping their storage free, so this could be an important point. We checked out a couple of games as well, just to have a feeling of how the performance matches up against the latest Snapdragon chipsets. Good news, there were no visible issues. If you do play for a very long time and the game is a CPU or GPU intensive one, then you will most likely see some slowing down and stuttering, so make sure to play sparingly and choose your games accordingly. Let's be honest, if you're spending around $300 on a phone and getting performance like this, I guess you'll be pretty happy with it. We also have some benchmark scores for you that we got as a result of testing the POCO F5 against a big competitor, the Galaxy A34. Geekbench was first on our list as a single core score was 1618 and the multi-core score was 4376. This is very good compared to the A34. The Antutu results were also quite impressive as the POCO F5 got just under 930,000, further solidifying that the phone runs fast, way faster than what you would expect for a budget phone. Compared to the A34, which is a similar price, the Snapdragon chips trumps the MediaTek one fairly easily and impressively. The camera was actually the biggest surprise for me because this is easily the Achilles heel of budget phones. Let us just show you some side-by-side photos with the Galaxy A34 because they're in the same price range. Since cameras and their parts are quite expensive if you're aiming for a big sensor and brand lens, it's one of the first areas of a phone that gets cut when trying to pull down the price. The POCO F5, however, has done a decent job if you're a casual phone user and are not pixel peeping every detail like you would if you own the latest Pixel or Galaxy. A 64 megapixel wide-angle camera with optical image stabilization information is what you will get if you decide to buy this phone, and it is surely good enough for everyday use. The ultra-wide camera is 8 megapixels, and regardless of the number, I personally don't prefer to use the ultra-wide cameras unless I really need them for some reason. This one is okay if you need it to come in handy, but I would still prefer the wide camera for general use. Portrait mode is also pretty good. The edge detection isn't perfect, and it's fairly obvious that this is software that cuts me out of the frame, but it's definitely usable, and you can't really expect more. There's also a dedicated macro lens. As it is the case most of the time, budget phones prefer putting in a macro lens instead of including it as software to work with the ultra-wide lens. As for video, the POCO F5 is able to shoot 4K with 30 FPS, which is more than what you'll need to shoot decent videos with. This has become the standard over time, and there's still a few years until we make shooting in 8K the norm. I am impressed with the video quality. It definitely can get the job done at a certain standard. The front camera has 16 megapixels. You most likely won't be needing it for more than some basic videos and maybe some reels and TikToks if you're into that kind of stuff. Not the best, but it's still alright. The device is a 5000 mAh battery, which is becoming the standard for pretty much every phone in this day and age. At first, it was a flagship thing, but now you're able to see a big battery in any phone, which does somewhat solve the problem of having to frequently charge your device. It has 67 watts turbocharging, something that impressed but didn't really surprise me, as this brand is connected to Xiaomi, who are fast charging experts. If you buy the Pro version, you also get wireless charging at 30 watts and a slightly larger battery. In conclusion, this is a very solid phone. Usually, budget phones have issues here and there, which is completely normal due to the price, but this phone actually has a really solid chipset, a big battery, along with decent cameras, and this last point is not something that I'm used to seeing in this price range. Speaking of, we're not sure for just how much money POCO will sell this phone, but my guess, based on previous releases, is that it will be around the $250 to $300 price range. Would you consider buying this phone, and if so, for what reason? Leave your thoughts in the comments and hit those like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed the video. See you soon.